Hey, I'm really about to collapse. There are always people knocking on the door of our dormitory in the middle of the night these days, which is really scary to death. Don't think too much.
Well, then come here. I rely on. I fell asleep so quickly.
This happened in 2021, when I was still in high school. Our dormitory had 12 beds, but only 10 people lived there at that time. My bed happened to be in the innermost lower bunk, very close to the bathroom and toilet. According to the regulations, the dormitory lights were turned off at 10 o'clock every night. After the lights were turned off, the dormitory aunt would visit the dormitory one by one. If he heard any dormitory still talking, he would knock on the door to warn that if he was talking, we would be hit. So at that time, people in our dormitory went to bed very early. However, less than half a month after the start of school, a strange thing happened in the dormitory. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, our dormitory door was suddenly knocked several times in a row. The two roommates who hadn't slept at the time sent a message in the group. Adu, is there anyone else who hasn't slept? Did you hear the knock on the door too? Yes, it's so late. Who would knock on the door? Could it be the dormitory aunt? But we didn't make a sound at all. Why did we knock on our door? Could it be someone who played a prank and deliberately scared us? Well, it's also possible. Although we all tacitly didn't say that in that regard, everyone understood in their hearts and then tacitly avoided that topic. At that moment, I couldn't help but shudder and quickly retracted my feet outside into the quilt. From that day on, we would hear knocks on the door every night, sometimes at 12 o'clock, sometimes at 1 o'clock, and even at 2 or 3 o'clock we would think of the night of the fourth day, and even weirder things began to happen. That night, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night without warning, and the silence around me was so quiet that it made me a little hairy. I wanted to turn over and continue to sleep, but just as I turned around, I saw a white figure at the door of the toilet. Half awake, I thought it was a roommate company, so I didn't care too much. So I closed my eyes and continued to sleep. When I saw the pajamas of each of my roommates, my heart sank suddenly because of the color of the pajamas they were wearing. However, the next morning, none of them were white. I'm a star hunter. Who of you got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet last night? The roommates looked at each other and then shook their heads in unison. In an instant, an indescribable sense of depression filled the air, and my back couldn't help but feel a chill, and I murmured in my heart who the white shadow was last night. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I felt, and I could only make up my own mind. In order not to scare everyone, I chose to remain silent, and I didn't mention it again after that. For the next few days, every night, the knock on the door still came as promised, which made everyone in our dormitory feel completely terrified. On the evening of the 8th day, my roommate Xiaobi, who was staying in the opposite bed, was finally so frightened that she cried and begged me if I could sleep with him tonight. I promised him and comforted him by saying, "Don't be afraid. Tomorrow we will go to the head teacher and the dormitory manager to reflect on these strange things that have happened in the dormitory in the past few days." That night, I slept on the outside of the bed, swiping my phone while preparing to fall asleep. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I suddenly felt a chill, and then a white shadow floated past me. I didn't see it wrong. That thing really floated past. At that moment, I was so scared that I opened my eyes suddenly, and my whole person was fully awake. The hand exposed outside was still holding the phone, and it was already shaking with fear. At the same time, the familiar knock on the door rang again. I suppressed my fear, turned over, and then tucked myself into the quilt, and the forearm next to me was already asleep. I was afraid of waking him up, so I tried my best to stay calm and not let my body tremble. That night, I completely lost sleep. The next day, my state became very poor, my spirit was very tired. My words became much less, and my eyes seemed a little dazed. My roommates looked at me and asked me what was wrong, but I didn't know how to tell them, because knocking on the door every night was scary enough. I didn't want to make everyone panic again because of what I saw last night. In the afternoon, we decided to go to the head teacher and the dormitory aunt and tell them about the strange things we encountered these days. After they heard our description, they obviously didn't believe us. And we also observed that the dormitory aunt's expression was a little stiff when she finished listening to this matter, but she quickly returned to normal. Finally, the head teacher took us to the monitoring room and called up the surveillance video of the corridor in the past few days. But the surveillance footage showed that at that time, the corridor was empty. The head teacher pointed to the surveillance footage and said in a stern tone, "Take a look for yourself. Who is knocking on the door? You stay up late every day until there are hallucinations, right? No wonder you are dozing off in class every day." We all lowered our heads and remained silent, but we all knew in our hearts that it was definitely not an illusion. And from the expression of the dormitory manager just now, we could analyze that something unknown must have happened in this dormitory before. Later, through the efforts of all the roommates, we still applied for a change of dormitory, and nothing strange happened since then, and the dormitory was completely sealed. Until one day my roommate Xiao Bi suddenly asked me, "Do you know why I had to sleep in the same bed with you that night?" He went on to recall that it was because he suddenly woke up late the night before without warning. After turning over, he found a white figure standing at the door of the toilet. At first he thought it was a company. When he was about to ask who it was, he suddenly remembered that I had asked everyone if anyone got up in the middle of the night to use the toilet, but everyone denied it. He felt a chill in an instant and quickly retracted the quilt, holding the pendant given to him by his grandmother. I don't know how long it took for the saint's chill to ease him a little.